Hello, so I decided to do option 2, which involved describing the types of joints from this week's content. So, I'm going to be doing this by creating a model using household items. So, here I have tape, I have colored pencils, and then pipe cleaner. So, yeah, the first kind of joint we are going to be talking about is bony joints. So, bony joints occurs when two bones fuse together and become one bone. And this is called synostosis. That is when there's no movement at all that occurs between the bones. So, yeah. So, right here, I have the two colored pencils, which represent the bones, the ones that are not fused together yet. And here's the pipe cleaner. So I'm going to be wrapping the pipe cleaner around these pencils to show how the bones fuse together. And now here I'm actually taking some tape and I'm going to be covering it just so that the tape shows that they're completely fused together. As you can see, there is no movement at all happening here. I'm pulling it, trying to pull it apart, I'm trying to move it, and no, it's completely fused together. And that's exactly what happens in bony joints. An example of bony joints would be the mandible and frontal bones. Both bones start out as two separate bones while young, but fuse into one solid bone as time goes on. Next, we'll be talking about fibrous joints. So, fibrous joints are made of dense fibrous connective tissues, which is said in the name fibrous joints. But yeah, they're primarily composed of strong collagen fibers. And these fibers allow the bones to have very little movement. And this is called, I'll try to pronounce it the best I can, synarthrosis. Synthrosis. So then I'm going to be taking these colored pencils, which again represent the bones, and these pipe cleaners, which represents the short collagen fibers. So basically I'm going to be wrapping these around the bones just to show how little movement actually occurs between them. Before I show the demonstration, I did want to talk about the three kinds of fibrous joints. So the first one is suture. These are the joints between the cranial bones. The second one is called the gum phosis. This is the joint between the tooth and mandible or the maxilla. The third one is called syndesmosis, and this is basically a slightly more movable joint. It has fibers that are a little longer, which allows for it to have that slight movement. And also these fibers hold two bones next to each other. An example of this would be the tibia and fibula, which is what is shown. Okay, so now back to this. As you can see, the short collagen fibers are completely bounding the bones. However, this does allow a little bit of movement to occur. As you can see, I'm actually moving it quite a bit. It's kind of hard to do it, but I'm like moving them a bit. You can see there's a little gap between the bones there too. So yeah, this does have a little bit of movement, unlike the bony joints that are not able to move at all. As you can see, I'm still trying to move it, it just won't. Unlike these that are able to move. The next joint that we'll be talking about is called cartilaginous joints. These are joints in which the two bones are linked by cartilage, and this provides for a moderate amount of movement. And this is called amphiarthrosis. For the demonstration, we'll be needing the two bones, of course. Then the pipe cleaners, which are going to be holding the cartilage in place. Then are these tiny sponges, which represent the cartilage. So now we're going to be taking the bones and we're going to be putting the cartilage in between. And then I'll just wrap the pipe cleaners around the whole thing. There are two types of cartilaginous joints. The first one is called synchondrosis, which basically means the bones that are bound by hyaline cartilage. An example of this would be the joints between the first rib and the sternum. The second one is called symphysis. This is when the bones are bound by a thick layer of fibrocartilage. An example of this would be the intervertebral discs. So here is the demonstration of the cartilaginous joints. As you can see, between are the sponges, and of course, as I said, those represent the cartilage. And then you can see that the bones are connected together but not entirely. But there's a little bit of give. There's some compression and slight movement between them. Finally, here we have the synovial joint. This is the most common and complex type of joint in the body. So, synovial joints involve a fluid-filled cavity that connects the bones. Because of this fluid between them, the joint is freely movable. This is called the diarthrosis. So here in the demonstration, we're going to be taking the two colored pencils which represent the bones, and we're going to overlap them a bit. Then I'm going to wrap around the pipe cleaner, which would act as the capsule, and that would create a gap between both of the bones. As you can see here, I'm actually moving it quite a bit, and out of the rest, this one was for sure the easiest to move around. So this red portion right here actually represents the joint capsule and the ligaments. The joint capsule surrounds the joint cavity. So here is a better representation of what is happening inside that capsule. As you can see here, imagine the pencils being these bones, and on the surfaces of these bones are articular cartilage. Articular cartilage is basically hyaline cartilage. Each of them have this on the surface of them to reduce the friction in case the bones come in contact with each other. Between the bones is the joint cavity. This is basically the narrow space between them. Inside of the cavity is synovial fluid, and this fluid lubricates the joints and reduces friction. Around it is the synovial membrane. It produces the synovial fluid. This is an inner membrane. On the outside is the fibrous capsule, which is on the outer part. It helps hold the joint together and retain the fluid. As I move the joint, what does this remind you of? For me, it reminds me directly of my own elbows and knees as they bend in that same direction.